Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we will be reading some dark, true, scary stories as I play the horror game White Noise. But a few things before we get into it. First, thank you guys for 30 subscribers. Second, some of the stories in this video may be triggering to some. So viewers' discretion is advised, and the stories will be linked in the description below. That being said, sit back and relax, and enjoy the video. Motherless, it's yours, I said as I firmly held the pregnancy test in my right hand. I heard him mutter something under his breath on the other line. Tyler? Yeah. I shook my head. Well, aren't you going to say anything? Are you sure? His voice cracked. I stared at the pregnancy test, clenched in my hand. The positive symbol, clear as day, had burned into my retinas after looking at it for what felt like an eternity. Yes, I'm positive, Tyler. Well, how do you know it's mine? I stood and paced back and forth in my bathroom. I listened to my neighbor above me turn their shower on, tracking the sound of the rushing water as it fell down toward the pipe behind the bathroom mirror. My cheeks began to run hot. What I would have given to have Tyler there with me at that very moment, just so I could see his stupid face. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? He paused. Katie, we only did it once. I leaned my head back and shook my cell phone, my mouth agape as I screamed in utter silence. I slammed the pregnancy test onto the bathroom counter, causing the mirror to rattle. It only takes one time, dumbass. Yeah, but... He paused. I knew exactly where this asshole was going. Still, I felt the need for him to clarify, as if that would somehow make things better. I sat back down on the toilet seat and closed my eyes. The bathroom walls felt like they were caving in. But what? I don't know. Maybe it's not mine? Oh, he did not just say that. I didn't fuck anyone else. He started to mumble something and began to apologize, but I quickly interrupted him before he could finish his bullshit spiel. What the hell do you think I am? You think I'm just some slut you picked up at a bar? Heat flooded through me. My throat tightened. How could I have let someone like him inside me? Every positive thing I had once seen in him had been washed over with disgust and hate. I didn't say that, Katie. I leaned back and tilted my head toward the yellow glow of the bathroom ceiling light, which flickered as a train rushed by outside, blaring its horn. I listened to the water that was running down my bathroom pipes above my head as my neighbor continued to take their shower. I exhaled, slowly shaking my head in disappointment. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting. After all, I'd only met Tyler a few weeks ago, yet it felt like I had been betrayed by someone I could trust and depend on, someone I had known for years. How could I have been so naive? Something broke inside me. My lips trembled as I spoke. You know what, Tyler? Just forget it. Forget I said anything. I'll deal with it. You and your precious little brain won't have to worry about a goddamn thing. Katie? Tyler began. I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the bathroom counter. I pressed my sweaty palms against my face and let it all out. I sat there for some time, holding myself. Then came the knocking. It was soft at first, barely caught my attention. I wiped my face and quietly left my bathroom. I waited in my living room and listened, glancing first the open window. Its white curtains lifted as a gust of air passed by. I had left it open so that the winter cold could air out my small apartment. I focused on my front door. I doubted I'd heard anything. Still, I decided to check just in case. I walked to the door and looked through its peephole. No one was there in the dimly lit apartment hallway. I brushed it off and sat down on my leather couch. The sound of my phone vibrating on the bathroom counter made my stomach turn. I knew he would be calling back. I had no intention of answering anytime soon. Let him sit on it for a while. Let him think about what he said and what he'd done. On the coffee table in front of me sat a small glass of water and the mifepristone pill from the clinic. My heart beat faster. I had a few friends who'd gotten an abortion before, yet still I wasn't comforted by this fact. I had never taken it before. Another gust of wind blew. Cold air pushed my curtains into the air. The breeze brushed past my face. I shivered. I grabbed the pill and rolled it around in my right hand. I couldn't do this, not with a guy like Tyler. I liked him, but he wasn't even remotely close to father material. Worst of all, I hated children. Hated how much they smelled and how noisy and dirty they could be. I was never meant to be a mother in this life. So why should I make a child suffer? I thought of my sister, what she had said to me about a year ago, one evening during a family gathering. We were at the dinner table. Small sticky fingers grabbed at me. I looked down and saw one of my nieces as she smiled back, wiping her nose. Then another one of her kids, a 7-month-old, threw up next to my dad's dinner plate. My sister looked at me across the table with this exhausted, hollow smile. She then whispered, "You're so lucky you're free, Katie." I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, the pill lying firmly on my palm. I counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. I quickly put the pill into my mouth, grabbed a glass of water, and swallowed. I felt it go down my throat and opened my eyes. There, it was finished. At least for now. There was one more pill that I had to take tomorrow. I shook my head as I stared at the baby carriage by my couch. I then went over and checked the front door to make sure it was shut and locked as I held the phone tightly against my face. "Where did you even find this thing? It looks ancient." "What do you mean?" Tyler said. "I'm not in the mood to play games, dude." "Katie, I'm being serious. What are you talking about? I didn't get you anything." I paused for a moment. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Tyler was never a good liar, and I could usually hear in the way he spoke. He was telling the truth. It finally dawned on me, something I should have figured out immediately before calling him. How could he have even done this? He lived about 20 minutes away from my place, and he had no idea I was even pregnant until the phone call. After all, we did youth protection. I looked down at the blanket inside of the carriage. I slowly walked over and crouched down next to it. My face was only inches away from the blanket. I could hear Tyler saying something on the other line as I slowly lifted the blanket. I gasped as I stumbled backwards onto the cold hardwood floor. Tyler was yelling for me, asking me if I was okay after hearing me in distress. Inside the white wicker carriage was my pregnancy test. It was impossible. I had left it on the bathroom counter. I quickly got up, ignoring Tyler, and rushed into the bathroom. The pregnancy test I left on the counter was gone. I knew it was the same one, yet still I looked around, hoping it wasn't true. After nearly destroying my organized bathroom, I stumbled out into the living room and stared at the carriage. "Katie, are you okay? Answer me, damn it." I grabbed the phone and held it against my right ear. "How fast can you get here?" "I can be there in a half hour." "Why? What's wrong?" My lips trembled. "Just come, please." The apartment was getting too cold. I had to shut the window, but continued pacing back and forth in the living room, waiting for Tyler to get here and comfort me. I looked down at my phone. 40 minutes had passed. Where the hell was he? I continued biting one of my nails, unable to look away from the carriage. The pregnancy test still lay in its bed. I wanted to erase the thought out of my head, but I knew what I had felt when I lifted that blanket out of the carriage. The blanket was warm to the touch like an animal had been lying in it, and it smelled of vanilla. Tyler failed to answer my fifth call. Enough was enough. I rushed over to the carriage and inspected every inch of it. Maybe whoever was doing this would leave me a clue or something. Was someone punishing me? The only other person I could think of was my mother. She was a very religious woman and had always been against abortions. But even she wouldn't be so cruel. Besides, my parents didn't know about the pregnancy, and I planned to keep it that way. There was nothing else in the carriage besides its little padding. No labels, no notes, nothing. Frustrated, I rolled away from me and stood back up. I jumped and shuddered as another train passed by, blaring its loud, obnoxious horn. My apartment was only 2 blocks away from the train tracks. Each time one would pass by, it would shake my windows and the pictures of my family hanging on the walls. I went over the window to look outside into the cold winter of Maine. The town I lived in was small, but the street was busy. People outside were rushing in and out of stores, covering their faces in freezing gusts of wind. I lay down on the couch and looked at my phone again. Still nothing from Tyler. I pulled up my contact list and scrolled down to my father's number. My thumb carefully hovered over the dial button. I wanted to call him, have him drive all this way from New York. Anything to feel his arms wrapped around me again and give me comfort during all this. I glanced at the carriage. I couldn't. If anything, he would be ecstatic to see the carriage. He had always wanted me to have a family of my own, his own grandson or granddaughter to love. Sadness filled my heart just at the thought of it. I couldn't do that to him. He would never look at me the same if he knew what his favorite daughter had done. Fatigue settled over me as I stared up at the white popcorn ceiling. There were chips of paint all across it. I listened to my neighbors as they walked above me. Every now and then they bickered at each other. I was never able to make out the words, but there were times I wondered if I should say something. By the time the train had finished rolling by, I was already dozing off. I had read that the pill can cause fatigue and dizziness in some people, so I assumed I was one of them, even with that awful thing inside my apartment. I couldn't resist the exhaustion pulling me under as I lay there on my couch. Rain. That was the first thing I heard. It was pouring outside. Winter was gone and the rain and thunderstorm had come in to take over. I shoved myself off the couch to the sound of raindrops inside my apartment. It was dark inside, too dark to see. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I stumbled forward through the thick night air and looked around for the source. Something was leaking inside my apartment. Outside my window, I saw a flash of lightning, and then the sound of gigantic thunder. Drip, drip, drip. I moved toward the wall behind the TV. My left hand pressed against the gray drywall. The wall was wet and soaked in water. I watched as droplets slowly made their way from the ceiling and climbed their way down the wall. Then near my height, I saw part of the wall push forward slightly. Another strike of lightning and thunder shook my dark apartment. I gently touched the part of the wall that was being pushed toward me. That's when I first heard it. A soft whimper from somewhere inside my apartment wall. I leaned closer to listen and felt the goosebumps crawl up my skin. It was crying louder now, still muffled by the drywall, but it sounded like a newborn crying. Without hesitation, I held my cell phone against my right cheek and shoulder for some light, and quickly dug my fingers into the wet drywall spot, where something was pushing toward me. The newborn continued to cry. "I'm coming!" I yelled frantically as I dug more and more into the wet wall. Chunks of drywall landed on my cold feet. The baby's cry was louder now and clearer than before. I was getting closer. Another round of lightning and thunder roared outside my apartment. I shoved my arm inside the hole I had made. My hand gently swiped around where I couldn't see, hoping to find where exactly the baby was. Without reason, I felt I had to find it. I needed to save it. I pushed further in. Something moved across my knuckles. I stopped and waited for it again. I felt the baby's tiny little fingers grab my right hand's pointing finger and gently grip it. I gasped. Instant relief flashed through me. I smiled and leaned my head against the wall. The baby had stopped crying. It was no longer alone. Now I just needed to get it out of the wall without harming it and figure out where it came from. Did it somehow fall down from the apartment above? Was it hurt? I was about to pull out more wet drywall with my other hand. But that's when I noticed what was above my head, what had replaced my entire ceiling. I looked and saw the storm swirling a few feet above my head. Lightning and thunder now roared inside my apartment. Droplets of rain splashed onto my face. I no longer had a ceiling. It was replaced by storm clouds and what looked like a tornado slowly forming into the center of my room. The baby cried again and gripped my finger harder. I turned and continued pulling out more drywall until I heard something new. "Hi!" The voice came from inside the wall I was tearing down. It didn't sound like a voice I recognized at all. I wouldn't even say it sounded like an adult's voice, not a child, but something was off with the way it sounded, like it was from a bad cartoon character. I froze, unwilling to remove myself from the baby's grip. The storm still swirled above me. My hair and face were soaked in water and bits of drywall. I felt the baby's grip loosen, and then another one replaced it, a hand much larger, and wear what I could only describe as a puffy glove. It pulled me toward the drywall. I tried to remove myself from its grip, but it was too strong. Whatever this was, it was going to pull me inside with it. The baby continued crying again as the other hand tugged. I felt hot cuts digging into my wrist as I pulled back with all my strength. The sound of thunder blared into my eardrums as I continued pulling away from whatever terrible new hell this was. I screamed and begged for it to let me go, but it wouldn't. Instead, it clawed at my wrist and pulled me forward. My right shoulder slammed into the wet drywall. Then came the sound of a loud horn and bright flashing lights blinded my vision as the thing pulled me further in. Katie! I screamed and clawed my way forward as I sat up. I struggled to breathe as Tyler knelt down beside me, holding me tightly. I collapsed into him. The storm was gone. You just had a bad dream, Tyler said as he petted the back of my head. I'm sorry, I gasped. I thought it was so real. It's okay, I'm here now, Tyler said. He then kissed my forehead. He looked around the living room, focusing on the TV. Remodeling, are we? He grinned. W what? I said. I was out of breath when I spoke. Tyler pointed toward the wall behind my TV. The weight of the world shifted beneath my feet. The blood drained from me. Several chunks of drywall were removed from my wall. I thought it was just a dream. How could any of that have been possible? I turned to Tyler as if expecting him to have all the answers. As he knelt there beside me, I couldn't help but wonder if even this was real too. Tyler, how did you get inside my apartment? Tyler turned toward me with a look of confusion. You don't know? I actually thought it was kind of weird, but figured you were just tired and forgot. Know what? Oh well. He pointed toward the front door. Your front door was left wide open. Come home with me, he said as he stirred the black coffee before handing it down to me. I shook my head. I don't understand. How is any of this possible? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Tyler sighed as he sat down next to me on the couch. It's stress. I think between being pregnant and taking the abortion pill, your mind is just exhausted. I took a small sip from the cup. The dream, maybe, but this... I pointed toward the carriage. This is real, Tyler. If it wasn't you then, who the hell would have done this and scared me like that? Tyler's dark brown eyes moved left to right as he spoke. His hands gently caressed mine. Look, I know I was being an asshole earlier. I'm sorry, really. I was just in shock, honestly. He then looked down at my hands. Can I tell you something? I gently nodded. He took a deep breath and relaxed his shoulders. I'd never seen him so comfortable with me before. It felt nice and warm. Something I deeply needed at that very moment. He then cleared his throat before he began, his hands never leaving mine. A few years ago, back when I was living in a small town in the outskirts of Maine, I met a man at this god-awful bar. Tyler laughed to himself. There wasn't much to do in that small town, and we were the only ones drinking. So he invited me to have a chat with him, and the first round was on him. Me being myself, how could I say no to free whiskey? Tyler grinned. Anyways, he said his name was Michael. We started talking about work and stuff. Then his wife started to call him. He kept ignoring her calls, and I asked him why. He said to me he couldn't go back there yet. He said his home no longer felt like home, not with the way he and his wife had been fighting. That's when I noticed the bruises and cuts on his knuckles. He tried to hide them when he realized I was looking, but it was already too late. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but somehow I found the courage to confront him about it. Tyler scratched the back of his head. His body language had changed. He no longer looked as relaxed as he did before. I watched him carefully as he stared back at me. He told me he never laid a hand on his wife. He needed to get out of the house, and when he walked his truck, he heard a man singing in the woods. Michael said he wasn't much of a spook, but he and his wife lived miles away from anyone else. So to hear another man singing in the woods near his house, well, that would unsettle just about anyone. Tyler stared down at my hands in deep thought until I spoke. So what did he do? I asked. Michael said he fell onto the ice, and then as fast as he could, he got into his truck and left his wife at the house. Next thing you know, here he is at the bar drinking whiskey like it's water and ignoring her 10th missed call. I found out a few days later he and his wife had disappeared. The police found footprints leading into the woods, but it was winter and they were never seen again. Tyler then turned closer to me. The reason I'm telling you this is because you have the same look on your face that he had that night. At the time, I thought he was crazy, that maybe he was lying about not hurting his wife. But I'll never forget the look on that man's face. He believed what he was saying, and I see it in you now. He gently lifted my left hand and kissed the top of my bruised hand. I see your hand, for cuts and bruises. I see the fear in your eyes, Katie. The same look he did. And I didn't believe him at first. I want you to know I believe you. That's why I want you to come home with me. His arms wrapped around me. His warm breath felt nice against my cold neck. Let's go back to my place for the night. Get you away from whatever the hell this is, okay? I closed my eyes and wrapped my arms around him and kissed his right cheek. Thank you, I said with a smile and relief. Something strange happened the morning after my mother died. Back in 2016, my mom was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, where only a year later, the doctors would then find 3 lesions in her brain. 2 years after her first diagnosis, my mom would sadly pass away. By this time, in the summer of 2018, we had been living in the Irish countryside for only a few months. My dad told me the news of my mom's passing on a very sunny morning. And to process this, I went to sit in the back garden, almost numb with denial. I then noticed something strange about my shadow. For some reason, the silhouette of my face looked exactly like that of my mom. I don't really look that much like my mom, as I more resemble my dad. But the face I saw in that shadow indeed appeared to be that of my mom. However, this was by no means the strangest thing to happen that morning. Only a little time later, still sat outside in the back garden, my dog then starts reacting to something coming from the open back door. When I go over to investigate, I realize what my dog is reacting to is a noise coming from the empty trash and directly behind the door. My dog seemed frightened of whatever this was, and so I walk cautiously over to the trash and peer inside. What I see at the very bottom of the empty trash is a tiny shrew, seemingly stuck and trying hopelessly to find its way out. If you're wondering why finding a shrew in a trash is so strange, then let me explain. My dad used to tell my mom that she had a cute nose like a shrew because of how pointy her nose was. So finding this shrew the day after my mom passed away was more than a little ironic. However, what was also strange about this was there was no way this tiny shrew could have climbed inside the trash can. The can was too tall and was completely empty, no trash or anything. So how this shrew got in there and was unable to get out again was rather odd. Calling my dad from the next room, he then comes to the kitchen and sees the shrew. My dad's always been good with animals, and so he scoops the shrew carefully into his hands, brings it to the garden, and releases it back into the wild. To sum up what I'm trying to get at here, on the morning after my mom's passing, I see my mother's face in my own shadow, and then I find a shrew, my dad's pet name for her, that impossibly got itself stuck inside a trash can, although we did live in the countryside, and so there were wild animals everywhere. This is the only shrew I have seen to date. This experience was very weird to me at the time, and now, thinking back on it, it still is. I know grief does strange things to the brain, but my dad, who considers himself an atheist, also found the shrew thing very strange. I don't really know all that much regarding the supernatural connection to death, and so if anyone has any insight into this experience of mine, I would really appreciate the advice. I don't believe my mom was reincarnated as a shrew or anything. In regard to her face in my shadow, I'm aware the mind can play tricks on you. But because I've heard other strange stories of people after losing loved ones, I'm more inclined to believe all this wasn't just a coincidence. Someone tried my door handle every night at 2:17 a.m. I never used to be paranoid about locking my door. I live alone in a small rented portion at the end of a quiet street where nothing unusual ever really happens. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, and nights are usually silent. That's why the first time I heard the sound, I convinced myself it was nothing. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night to a soft metallic click. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but then I heard it again, a slow, careful rattle. It was my front door handle being pressed down. I grabbed my phone. 2:17 a.m. I froze in bed, staring into the darkness, listening as the handle moved once more, gently, like someone was testing it without wanting to make noise. After a few seconds, it stopped. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. The next morning, I told myself it was probably the wind or the metal shifting because of the temperature, even though deep down I knew exactly what it sounded like. The second night, I was awake when it happened. I remember checking the time at 2:16 a.m. before putting my phone down. Exactly 1 minute later, I heard it again. Click, rattle, Slower this time, more deliberate. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Whoever was outside wasn't aggressively trying to break in. They were calmly testing the handle, like they were hoping tonight might be the night I forgot to lock it. I didn't move. I didn't turn on any lights. I just lay there, completely still, until it stopped. By the third night, I knew it wasn't random. I turned off all the lights and sat quietly in the living room, staring at the door. When 2:17 a.m. came, the handle slowly pressed down right in front of my eyes. The door shifted slightly in its frame, but the lock held. My entire body went cold. I forced myself to look through the peephole, and that's when I realized something even worse. Whoever it was wasn't standing directly in front of the door. They were positioned slightly to the side, out of view, like they knew how peepholes worked. I installed a small motion camera. The next day, on the fourth night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with notification. Motion detected. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. A man in a dark hoodie stood beside my door. His face wasn't fully visible, but I could clearly see his mouth. He was smiling, not nervously, not angrily, calmly, like this was routine for him. He gently tried the handle twice, then leaned closer to the door for a moment before stepping back and walking out of frame. The police took it seriously after seeing the footage and increased patrols in the area. After that, it stopped. No more rattling. No more 2:17 a.m. visits. Months have passed now, and technically I'm safe. But I still wake up almost every night around the same time, instinctively checking the clock as it turns from 2:16 to 2:17. The door hasn't moved again, yet I can't shake the feeling that he wasn't in a hurry to get inside. It felt like he was patient, like he was waiting for one small mistake. And sometimes, when I step outside in the evening, I catch myself scanning the street, half expecting to see a man in a hoodie standing at the corner, not looking at the houses, just looking at mine. I took a shortcut through the bush at 16. I think something followed me. I've been seeing a lot of scary Reddit stories shared on TikTok and Instagram lately, and it finally made me feel brave enough to share something that happened to me when I was 16, living in my hometown in Australia. When I was 16, I got into my first somewhat serious relationship. He was my close friend's older brother, and their house was about a 10-minute walk from mine. If you were willing to cut through a stretch of bushland along a barely noticeable dirt road, my house sat directly across the street from the entrance to that bush track. One night, I was at my boyfriend's place watching a movie, and we both fell asleep. When we woke up, it was almost 11 p.m. His mom had a strict no sleepovers rule, especially for partners. He walked me to the door, said goodbye, and that was it. Looking back now, I really think he should have offered to walk me home. I was only 16 and it was late. I started down the street toward the bushland entrance. Going the long way around through the streets would have taken over 20 minutes, while the bush track only took about 10. I'd used this shortcut plenty of times before, but usually during the day and rarely alone. It was a moonlit night, and I remember thinking the moon was unusually bright. Honestly, one of the most beautiful I'd ever seen. The light filtered through the trees, so the bush wasn't in total darkness, which made me feel a bit better about not tripping. A steady breeze moved through the leaves. It was late September, and that kind of cool, windy night is pretty typical for an Australian spring. I was just over halfway down the dirt road when I noticed something strange. The breeze was still blowing. I could see the trees moving, but everything had gone completely silent. No insects, no rustling, no distant traffic, nothing. It was a kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop. I felt uneasy, but I kept walking. A few moments later, a heavy sinking feeling hit my gut so hard that I stopped dead in my tracks. I just stood there, staring straight ahead, when a sharp chill ran up my spine. It's hard to explain, but my body was screaming at me to run, while my brain was telling me to turn around. To this day, I wish I had just run, but my curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, with my breathing getting heavier, I turned my head. Standing meters behind me on the path was a tall, thin, dark figure. It didn't look like a normal shadow. It had shape, presence, and the only thing I could make out clearly were his eyes, glowing and locked directly onto me. My body instantly went into full fight or flight mode. I turned and sprinted down the dirt road toward my house. I wasn't thinking about anything except getting back to my street. Somewhere visible, somewhere safer, somewhere human. I don't even remember my feet hitting the ground. It felt like I flew. I jumped my back fence, rushed my bedroom window, slid it open and climbed inside. That was the first time I stopped running. I turned to look behind me. There was nothing in the yard, nothing on the street, but I could still feel it. That horrible sensation of being watched, like when someone's stare lingers a little too long. I'd barely slept that night. I only drifted off when the skies started to lighten. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The bedroom I was in had originally been my older sister's. She'd moved in front of the house for more space, and I took her old room. The window in that room never properly closed. I later found out it was because she used to sneak out at night and had damaged the latch so it could be opened from the outside. That's how I got in so quickly that night. A few nights later, I was asleep when I suddenly felt the energy in the room change. I jolted awake instantly, like my body sensed something before my brain did. My window was slightly open. I knew I had shut it. I was still shaking from the other night, and I had double-checked it before bed. I got up slowly, walked over, and pushed it closed without even looking outside. I didn't want to see anything. I just wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. After that, the nightmare started. I kept dreaming that my window was opening while I slept, and that someone or something was trying to get in. The dreams were so vivid and frequent that I could barely sleep at night. Eventually, I could only get proper rest during the day. After a couple weeks, I was desperate. I came up with an idea. If the window could slide open from the outside, I'd jam it. I found a piece of wood the right size and wedged it along the window track, so it physically couldn't move. I had my brother test it from outside. It wouldn't budge. After that, the window never opened again. But I never walked through that bushland ever again either. Not alone, not with friends, not even in daylight. I didn't want to tempt anything. Over the years, I've only told this story to a handful of people. One of them was my best friend and his partner, who is Aboriginal. When I described the figure I saw, the look on his face genuinely scared me. He told me he believed I might have encountered a Mokoi in some Yolnga belief from Arnhem Land. A Mokoi is a malevolent spirit associated with death, illness, and misfortune. It's said to lurk in dense bushland at night. They're known to be stealthy, fast, and often invisible, which made him say it was unusual that I saw it at all. He also said something that stayed with me ever since, that the darkness connected to a Mokoi can follow a person long after the encounter, if they manage to escape. The way he said it made my stomach drop. I'm 30 now. I live an hour away from my hometown with my partner and our 2 dogs. But every now and then, I still have that nightmare. I'm back in that bedroom. It's dark. The window starts to slide open, and I hear the soft thud of wood hitting the frame as something tries to force its way inside. Even now, sometimes when I'm alone and it's dark, I feel that same shift in the air, that same heavy, watchful presence. I don't know if it's just my brain replaying old fear, or if something from that night in the bush is still trying to find a way in. The Man in the Rain. This happened when I was 10. It was around 6 p.m. The sun was going down. It had just started raining, not heavy, just enough to make everything feel colder and quieter than usual. I was outside alone, just walking like I normally did. That's when a man called me over. I didn't think anything of it. I was a kid. When adults talked, you listened. That's how I understood the world back then. He told me to come closer. I did. Then he told me to sit on his lap. I hesitated for half a second. But I didn't understand danger the way I do now. So I sat down. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then something changed. The way he moved slightly. The way my stomach suddenly felt tight. Even at 10, my body knew before my brain did. Something wasn't right. He told me to stand up. I did. Then he told me to take off my pants. I shook my head saying no. Someone walked past us. They glanced over, then kept walking. That's when I realized no one was coming to help. The sun was almost gone. Then the man started blocking my paths. I didn't want to imagine what if the sun fell. As a 10-year, I was a bit smart. I started counting in my head. 3, 2, run. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was close to my house. I got home safe, but my heart didn't slow down for a long time. I never told anyone back then. I was 10 when I learned that danger doesn't always look dangerous. Now I started to think of it. What if the person walking past wasn't just a stranger?